Emma Foster stood frozen in place as the sleek black SUV pulled up, kicking dust into the crisp autumn air. Her heart sank. They were here again, the city people with their expensive clothes and empty promises. She tightened her grip on her walking cane and straightened her shoulders, determined not to let her limp show more than necessary. "That must be him," whispered Sarah, the general store owner, nudging Emma with her elbow. "Jason Marks himself, the tech millionaire everyone's been talking about." Emma sighed. "Great, another rich man coming to save our poor little village." The car door swung open, and a tall man in a tailored navy suit stepped out. His polished leather shoes seemed almost offended by the dirt road beneath them. Jason Marks surveyed the small gathering of Pinewood residents with the confident smile of someone used to commanding attention. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, not bothering to introduce himself, "I'm thrilled to be here in your charming community." His pause before the word charming didn't go unnoticed. Emma watched as the villagers nodded and smiled nervously. They had been through this routine before. Wealthy outsiders with grand plans that never materialized. But this time was different. The town desperately needed the investment that Marks Technology had dangled before them. Their small rural community in western Pennsylvania was dying, and everyone knew it. Jason's eyes scanned the crowd and landed on Emma. Something flickered across his face, curiosity perhaps, or amusement. Emma felt her cheeks warm under his gaze, but refused to look away. "We'll start the tour at the community center," announced Mayor Wilson, a balding man whose enthusiasm seemed forced even to him. "Ms. Foster here has been coordinating our local improvement efforts." Jason raised an eyebrow. "You're the community coordinator?" The question came with a slight smirk that made Emma's skin prickle. "I volunteer," she replied evenly. "We all do what we can here." The tour began awkwardly, with Mayor Wilson chattering nervously about Pinewood's untapped potential, while Jason nodded politely, occasionally typing notes into his phone. Emma trailed behind, answering questions when needed, but otherwise keeping her distance. At the community center, a former church that had seen better days, Jason seemed to lose interest in the mayor's speech about renovation plans. Instead, he wandered toward a bulletin board where Emma had posted schedules for various community programs. "You organized all these?" he asked when she approached. "Yes," Emma replied. "The after-school program, elder care visits, job skills workshops. We make do with what we have." Jason tilted his head, studying her with that same amused expression. "And what exactly do you do for a living, Miss Foster, when you're not making do?" The condescension in his tone was unmistakable. Emma felt her patience wearing thin. "I manage the library 3 days a week," she answered. "I help my brother with his physical therapy. I coordinate food deliveries to homebound residents, and I fix things that need fixing." "Jack of all trades," Jason remarked with a chuckle. "How quaint." Before Emma could respond, Mayor Wilson called them over to discuss the potential site for Marks Technology's Rural Innovation Hub. Emma reluctantly followed, gripping her cane tighter than necessary. The day wore on with tours of potential building sites, meetings with local business owners, and endless talk about revitalization opportunities. Throughout it all, Emma noticed how Jason's initial interest seemed to wane with each passing hour. His responses grew shorter, his eyes returning to his phone more frequently. By late afternoon, they reached Emma's favorite spot in town, the old gazebo overlooking Miller's Pond. Usually a place of peace for her, today it felt tainted by the corporate invasion. "This area could use some landscaping," Jason commented, brushing dust from his sleeve. "But I suppose there's a certain rustic charm to it." Something in Emma snapped. "Mr. Marks, you've been here 5 hours, and all you've done is point out what's wrong with our town while barely hiding your disdain. If you're not actually interested in helping Pinewood, we'd all appreciate it if you'd stop wasting our time." The words escaped before she could stop them. Mayor Wilson looked horrified, but Emma stood her ground, meeting Jason's surprised gaze directly. For a moment, silence hung in the air. Then, to her shock, Jason laughed. A genuine laugh that transformed his face completely. "Finally, someone who doesn't kiss up to me," he said, eyes now focused entirely on Emma. "Refreshing." Emma blinked, thrown off balance. "I'm not here to entertain you, Mr. Marks." "Clearly not." He stepped closer. "Tell me, Ms. Foster, if you were in my position, what would you do for Pinewood?" The question seemed sincere, but Emma remained wary. "I wouldn't swoop in pretending to understand a community I've spent 5 hours in. I'd listen to the people who live here, not just the mayor and business owners, but families struggling to make ends meet, kids with no opportunities, elders watching their hometown fade away." Jason's expression shifted, his amusement giving way to something more thoughtful. "Go on." "We don't need charity," Emma continued, emboldened by his attention. "We need sustainable solutions, jobs that can't be outsourced, infrastructure that serves everyone, not just those who can pay for it, and respect for our way of life, even if it seems quaint to you." Mayor Wilson cleared his throat nervously. "Perhaps we should move on to—" "No," Jason interrupted, eyes still on Emma. "I want to hear more." He gestured to a bench. "May we?" Reluctantly, Emma sat beside him while the mayor hovered anxiously nearby. For the next 30 minutes, she found herself explaining the realities of rural life in Pinewood, the practical challenges, the untapped resources, the resilience of people who had been overlooked for generations. To her surprise, Jason asked thoughtful questions and actually seemed to listen to her answers. As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the pond, Emma realized she had completely derailed the official itinerary. "I apologize for taking up so much time," she said, suddenly self-conscious. Jason shook his head. "Don't. This is the most valuable conversation I've had all day." He stood, straightening his jacket. "Mayor Wilson, I'd like to continue our discussions tomorrow. For now, I need to make some calls." As he walked away, phone already pressed to his ear, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that something unexpected had just happened. Whether good or bad remained to be seen. That evening, Emma pushed open the door to the small house she shared with her brother, Michael. The familiar smell of his homemade vegetable soup greeted her. "How'd it go with Mr. Moneybags?" Michael called from the kitchen. Despite being confined to a wheelchair since the accident 3 years ago, he managed to keep their home running while Emma worked. "I may have ruined everything," she admitted, hanging up her jacket. "I told him off for being condescending." Michael wheeled himself into the living room, a wooden spoon still in hand. "You did what?" Emma collapsed onto the worn sofa. "I couldn't help it, Mike. He was looking at everything like it was beneath him, laughing at our town, at our efforts to keep things going." Michael groaned. "We need that investment. The whole town needs it." "I know," she sighed, guilt creeping in. "But then the strangest thing happened. After I called him out, he actually seemed interested, asked real questions, listened to my answers." Michael raised an eyebrow. "Maybe he's not as bad as you thought. Or maybe he's just playing nice before he decides to pass on Pinewood completely." Emma rubbed her tired eyes. "Anyway, nothing I can do about it now. How was your therapy session today?" As Michael filled her in on his progress, Emma tried to push thoughts of Jason Marks aside. But his transformation from dismissive executive to engaged listener kept replaying in her mind. Had she glimpsed the real man behind the corporate facade? Or was it all an act? The next morning, Emma opened the library as usual, expecting another quiet day of helping students with research and elderly patrons with computer questions. Instead, at precisely 10 a.m., Jason Marks walked through the door. The 3 patrons present all turned to stare as he approached the front desk where Emma stood frozen in surprise. "Ms. Foster," he greeted her, as casually as if they'd planned this meeting. "I hoped I might find you here." Emma recovered her composure. "Mr. Marks, The business section is to your right if you're looking for reading material. The corner of his mouth twitched. Actually, I'm here to see you. I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday. Before she could respond, the library door opened again, and a group of elementary school children filed in with their teacher for their weekly story time. I'm sorry, Emma said, genuinely disappointed to cut short whatever Jason had come to say. I need to… Story time, Jason observed. May I stay? 20 minutes later, Emma found herself sitting in the reading circle with 12 first graders and one tech millionaire. She read from a well-worn copy of The Little Engine That Could, occasionally glancing up to find Jason watching her with an intensity that made her nervous. When the children moved to the craft tables, Jason approached her again. You're good with them, he commented. Emma shrugged. They're good kids. I've made a decision, he said abruptly. I want you to be directly involved in planning Marks Technologies' investment in Pinewood. Emma stared at him. What? You understand this community in ways I never could, Jason continued. You know what will work here and what won't. I need that perspective. Are you offering me a job? A partnership, he clarified. Paid, of course, but more importantly, a chance to actually implement some of those ideas you mentioned yesterday. Emma's heart raced. This could be exactly what Pinewood needed, what she needed. A chance to make real change, but suspicion tempered her excitement. Why me? She asked. Yesterday, you could barely hide your disdain for our quaint little town. Jason's expression grew serious. Because you were right. I came here with preconceived notions and a superiority complex. You called me out on it, and I respect that. He paused. I need someone who will tell me the truth, not what they think I want to hear. As Emma contemplated his offer, a commotion erupted at the craft table, spilled glue and tears. Excuse me, she said, hurrying over to help. By the time she had resolved the crisis, she half expected Jason to have disappeared, his patience worn thin by the mundane realities of small-town life. Instead, she found him helping 6-year-old Tyler clean glue from his hands, listening intently as the boy explained the intricacies of his dinosaur drawing. Their eyes met over Tyler's head, and something shifted in Emma's perception of Jason Marks. Perhaps there was more to the millionaire than she had assumed, just as there was more to Pinewood than he had initially seen. The question was whether either of them was ready to look beyond first impressions and find the truth that lay beneath. 1 week after Jason's surprise visit to the library, Emma found herself sitting across from him in a makeshift office they'd set up in the back room of the community center. Maps and papers covered the folding table between them. A half-empty box of donuts sat beside Emma's coffee mug. So you're really going forward with this? She asked, still not quite believing that Jason Marks had actually chosen Pinewood for his company's rural development project. Jason looked up from the document he was reviewing. You sound surprised. I am, Emma admitted. I half expected you to get back to the city and forget all about us. He set down his pen. Is that what usually happens? Emma nodded. We've had our share of promises from outsiders. They come, they see, they leave. Nothing changes. I'm not them, Jason said simply. Something in his tone made Emma believe him, despite her better judgment. Over the past week, she'd watched him dive into the project with unexpected enthusiasm. He'd extended his stay at the only bed and breakfast in town, postponed meetings in New York, and seemed genuinely invested in understanding Pinewood's needs. All right, Emma said, pulling a notebook from her bag. Let's go over the community survey results again. For the next hour, they reviewed the feedback Emma had collected from town residents about their most pressing needs. Employment opportunities topped the list, followed by healthcare access and youth programs. The old textile factory has been empty for 8 years now, Emma explained, pointing to a spot on the town map. Most families had at least one person working there. When it closed, many people had to leave town to find work. Jason studied the map. The building is still structurally sound. Yes, the owners just couldn't compete with overseas production. Jason nodded thoughtfully. Perfect location for our tech training center. Close to residential areas, plenty of parking space. Emma leaned forward. But here's my concern. How many locals can actually fill the jobs you're creating? Most people here don't have technical backgrounds. That's why we start with training, Jason replied. Basic digital skills first, then more specialized programs for those who show aptitude. Not everyone will become software engineers, but there are plenty of support roles that pay well and can be done remotely. Emma was impressed by how much thought he'd given this, but she remained cautious. And after the training, when the project is over and you go back to your real life? Jason's eyes met hers. That's the beauty of remote work, Emma. Once trained, people can work from here permanently. My company needs customer service reps, data entry specialists, quality assurance testers, all jobs that can be done from anywhere with a good internet connection. Which we don't have, Emma pointed out. Jason grinned. Yet, that's phase 1 of the project. As they continued planning, Emma felt a strange mixture of hope and anxiety. If Jason delivered what he promised, it could transform Pinewood. But the bigger the promise, the harder the fall if things went wrong. Later that afternoon, Emma limped slightly as she walked with Jason through town, pointing out locations that might work for different aspects of the project. Her leg was bothering her more than usual today, but she pushed through the discomfort. "Are you okay?" Jason asked, noticing her slowed pace. "Fine," Emma said quickly. "Just an old injury acting up." Jason looked like he wanted to ask more, but seemed to sense her reluctance. Instead, he changed the subject. "Tell me about your brother. You mentioned he needs physical therapy." Emma was surprised by his interest. Michael was in a car accident 3 years ago, spinal cord injury. He's paralyzed from the waist down. "I'm sorry," Jason said, and for once his words held no trace of condescension. "He's adjusted better than anyone expected," Emma continued. "He teaches music online now, piano and guitar, but healthcare around here is limited. He has to travel 2 hours to see specialists." They stopped in front of the old gazebo where they'd had their first real conversation. Jason was quiet for a moment, looking out over Miller's Pond. "Healthcare access," he murmured. "That was high on the community survey." Emma nodded. "Many people here just go without. Can't afford the time or money to travel for appointments." "What if we added a telehealth component to the community center?" Jason suggested. "Private rooms with high-speed connections where people could consult with doctors remotely?" Emma stared at him. "You could do that? It's just technology and space." Jason shrugged, as if it were simple. "The hard part is finding doctors willing to participate. But I have connections in healthcare tech." For a moment, Emma allowed herself to imagine what such a resource would mean for Pinewood, for Michael, for elderly residents, for families with young children. It seemed too good to be true. "Why are you really doing this, Jason?" she asked abruptly. "And don't give me the corporate line about social responsibility." Jason seemed caught off guard by her directness. He was quiet for so long that Emma thought he might not answer. "When I was growing up," he finally said, "my family lived in a town not unlike this one. My father lost his job when the local factory closed. We struggled. Eventually, we had to move to the city for him to find work." He looked away. "I promised myself that if I ever had the power to prevent that from happening to other families, I would." The personal admission surprised Emma. It didn't fit with the image she'd formed of Jason as a privileged city executive who'd never known hardship. "I didn't know," she said softly. "It's not something I talk about much," Jason admitted. "Doesn't quite fit the successful CEO image." Emma felt something shift between them, a new understanding that went beyond their professional partnership. Before she could respond, her phone rang. It was Michael. "Sorry," she said to Jason, answering the call. "Hey Mike, what's up?" Her brother's voice came through, tense and urgent. "Em, it's Mrs. Winters. Sarah found her collapsed at the general store. Ambulance is on its way, but it'll take at least 40 minutes. Emma's heart sank. Mrs. Winters was 82 and lived alone since her husband died. She had a heart condition. "I'll be right there," she said, ending the call. She turned to Jason. "I have to go. Community emergency." "I'll come with you," he said without hesitation. Emma was too worried to argue. They hurried toward the general store, Emma pushing through the pain in her leg. The scene at Sarah's general store was tense. Mrs. Winters lay on the floor, pale and breathing shallowly. Sarah knelt beside her, holding her hand, while a small crowd of concerned neighbors gathered around. "Her nitroglycerin didn't help," Sarah explained as Emma and Jason arrived. Ambulance dispatcher said to keep her comfortable and monitor her breathing. Emma knelt down beside the elderly woman. "Mrs. Winters, can you hear me?" The woman's eyes fluttered open. "Emma, dear, I'm so sorry for the trouble." "No trouble at all," Emma assured her, though worry gnawed at her stomach. The nearest hospital was 45 minutes away. If the ambulance came from there, Mrs. Winters might not make it. To her surprise, Jason knelt down on Mrs. Winters' other side. "Ma'am, I'm Jason Marks. I'm going to help if I can. Do you know what kind of heart condition you have?" "Angina," Mrs. Winters whispered. "But this feels worse." Jason nodded, his expression calm but concerned. He pulled out his phone. "I'm calling my personal physician. He's a cardiologist." Within minutes, Jason had his doctor on video chat, describing Mrs. Winters' symptoms and following his instructions to check her pulse and breathing. "It sounds like she's having a heart attack," the doctor said gravely. "She needs immediate medical attention. Is the ambulance on its way?" "Yes, but it's at least 30 minutes out," Jason replied. The doctor's face grew serious. "That may be too long. Does anyone there have medical training?" Sarah raised her hand. "I was a nurse's aide years ago." "Good. Here's what you need to do until the ambulance arrives." For the next 20 minutes, they worked together, Jason relaying the doctor's instructions, Sarah performing basic medical care, Emma comforting Mrs. Winters, and Michael, who had arrived shortly after, coordinating with the ambulance dispatcher by phone. When the EMTs finally burst through the door, Mrs. Winters was stable but still in danger. As they loaded her onto a stretcher, she reached for Emma's hand. "Thank you, dear," she whispered. Then, looking at Jason, she added, "And thank you, young man. I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't been here." After the ambulance departed, with Sarah accompanying Mrs. Winters to the hospital, an exhausted silence fell over the store. The remaining neighbors gradually dispersed, leaving Emma, Michael, and Jason alone. "That was quick thinking," Michael said to Jason, "with the video call." Jason shook his head. "Basic problem solving. Your sister is the one who really helped keep her calm." Emma was too tired to deflect the compliment. "We all did what we could." She sank into a chair, the adrenaline fading and leaving her drained. Looking around the empty store, a thought struck her. "This is what we're talking about, Jason. Medical emergencies that take too long to address. People who might not survive the wait." Jason nodded, his expression serious. "I understand now. It's one thing to read about healthcare gaps on paper. It's another to see it firsthand." The three of them sat in silence for a moment, processing what had happened. "You know," Michael said finally, "your telehealth idea is good, but what about emergency response? Is there a way technology could help with that too?" Jason looked thoughtful. "Actually, there might be. Some rural communities are using drones to deliver emergency medical supplies ahead of ambulances." Emma straightened. "Like defibrillators?" "Exactly. And emergency medications. They can arrive in minutes instead of hours." The conversation continued as they locked up the store and walked slowly back toward Emma and Michael's house. Despite the stress of the day, Emma felt a spark of real hope. For the first time, Jason wasn't just talking about abstract improvements. He'd seen firsthand what was at stake. 2 days later, Mrs. Winters was recovering in the hospital. The doctors confirmed she'd had a mild heart attack and that the quick response, especially the video consultation with Jason's cardiologist, had likely saved her life. Word spread quickly through Pinewood. By the time Emma arrived at the community center for her meeting with Jason, she found him surrounded by residents eager to thank him and learn more about his plans for the town. She hung back, watching with amusement as Jason navigated the unexpected attention. He seemed uncomfortable with the praise, but genuinely engaged with people's questions and concerns. When the crowd finally dispersed, Jason spotted Emma and walked over. "Sorry about that," he said, straightening his shirt. "Didn't expect the welcome committee." Emma smiled. "You're a hero now, Mr. Marks. Better get used to it." He grimaced. "I'm no hero. I just happen to have a doctor's number in my contacts." "That's not how they see it." Emma gestured to where the last of the visitors were leaving. "Mrs. Winters is one of our most beloved residents. You helped save her." Jason seemed about to protest further, but instead sighed and changed the subject. "I've been thinking about what your brother said, about emergency response." "And?" "I made some calls. There's a medical drone program being piloted in rural Colorado. They're looking to expand to new test sites." Emma's eyes widened. "And you think Pinewood could be one?" "I think it's worth exploring," Jason said cautiously. "No promises yet, but I'm meeting with their team next week." Emma felt a rush of excitement. That could change everything. Jason nodded, a small smile playing at his lips. "It could, but there's a catch." "Isn't there always?" Emma braced herself. "What is it?" "They want community involvement. A local team trained to receive and deploy the drones, maintain the equipment, coordinate with emergency services." "We can do that," Emma said confidently. "Michael would be perfect to lead it. He's been looking for meaningful work he can do from his wheelchair." Jason seemed pleased by her enthusiasm. "There's one more thing. They want me directly involved in the pilot, which means you'd need to stay in Pinewood longer than planned." Emma finished his thought. "Yes, possibly months instead of weeks." Emma wasn't sure how she felt about that. Part of her welcomed the extended commitment to the project. Another part worried about growing too accustomed to Jason's presence, to his innovative ideas, his unexpected kindness, his ability to make things happen that had seemed impossible before. "Is that a problem?" Jason asked, watching her closely. Before Emma could answer, the community center door burst open. Mayor Wilson rushed in, his face flushed. "Emma! Mr. Marks! Thank goodness you're both here!" He was breathing hard, as if he'd run all the way from town hall. "What's wrong?" Emma asked, alarm rising in her chest. The mayor held up a letter, his hand shaking slightly. "This just arrived by courier. It's from Westfield Development Corporation." Jason frowned. "The real estate company? What do they want with Pinewood?" Mayor Wilson's eyes were wide with shock. "They've made an offer to buy the old textile factory and the surrounding 50 acres. "What?" Emma gasped. "But that's where your tech training center was going to be," the mayor finished. "Yes." Jason's expression darkened. "How did they even know we were interested in that property?" "That's not all," Mayor Wilson continued. "They're also offering to build a luxury wilderness retreat that would create employment opportunities for local residents." He made air quotes around the corporate phrases. Emma and Jason exchanged worried glances. This was exactly the kind of development Pinewood didn't need, one that would bring low-paying service jobs while catering to wealthy outsiders. "Do they have the legal right to make this purchase?" Jason asked, his business mind clearly working through the implications. "The property's been for sale for years," Emma said numbly. "Anyone with enough money could buy it." "And they have a lot of money," Mayor Wilson added grimly. "More than our town budget for the next decade." Jason took the letter, scanning it quickly. "This is Robert Westfield's company. I know him." His jaw tightened. This is no coincidence. What do you mean? Emma asked. Jason's eyes met hers, cold and determined in a way she hadn't seen before. Robert is my former business partner and my biggest competitor. He set the letter down carefully. He's doing this to block our project. Can he do that? Emma asked, panic rising in her throat. He can try, Jason said, his voice dangerously quiet. Mayor Wilson looked between them, clearly confused by the sudden tension. What do we do? Emma watched as something shifted in Jason's demeanor. The casual, occasionally condescending businessman was gone, replaced by someone more formidable. First, Jason said, pulling out his phone, I make some calls. Then we figure out exactly what Westfield is up to. He looked at Emma. This changes things. If you want me to back off, now's the time to say so. Emma straightened her shoulders, gripping her cane tightly. Back off? No way. If anything, we need to push harder. A smile, grim but appreciative, spread across Jason's face. Then it looks like Pinewood has a fight on its hands. As Mayor Wilson excused himself to notify the town council, Emma stood beside Jason, a strange mixture of fear and determination coursing through her. Whatever she had expected from her partnership with Jason Marks, it certainly wasn't this. Yet somehow, she knew they were just getting started. The news about Westfield Development Corporation spread through Pinewood like wildfire. By the following morning, Emma could feel the shift in the town's mood, hope giving way to resignation. They'd seen this story play out before. Big money wins, small towns lose. But Jason Marks seemed determined to break that pattern. He's been on the phone since 5 a.m., Michael told Emma as she entered the kitchen for breakfast, pacing back and forth on the front porch like a man possessed. Emma glanced out the window. Sure enough, Jason stood on their porch, phone pressed to his ear, gesturing emphatically as he spoke. He'd shown up at their door last night with stacks of documents and a grim determination that surprised even Emma. Did he sleep at all? She asked, pouring herself coffee. Michael shrugged. Doubt it. He was still working when I went to bed, and he was already up when I got up. Emma sighed. Jason had insisted on staying to work late, claiming the internet at the bed and breakfast wasn't reliable enough for the research he needed to do. She'd offered the couch, expecting him to refuse, but he'd accepted without hesitation, another sign of how serious the situation had become. Through the window, she watched as he ended his call and ran a hand through his disheveled hair. His usually immaculate appearance had given way to wrinkled clothes and day-old stubble. Somehow, the imperfection made him seem more human. She opened the front door. Coffee? Jason turned, looking momentarily disoriented, as if he'd forgotten where he was. Yes, please, that would be... He trailed off, distracted by another incoming call. Sorry, I need to take this. Emma nodded and went back inside. By the time she returned with a mug of coffee, Jason had finished his call and was staring thoughtfully at the quiet street. Any progress? She asked, handing him the coffee. Some. He took a grateful sip. I've confirmed what I suspected. Robert is definitely targeting this project specifically. How can you be sure? Jason's expression hardened. Because Westfield Development has no history of building luxury wilderness retreats. They specialize in urban commercial properties. This sudden interest in rural Pennsylvania makes no sense, unless the goal is to block us. Emma leaned against the porch railing. I don't understand. Why would he go to such lengths? Jason hesitated, as if weighing how much to share. Robert and I have history. We founded Marks Technology together 15 years ago. He paused. The partnership didn't end well. What happened? We had different visions, Jason said carefully. I wanted to expand into areas that could make positive social impact alongside profit. Robert was focused solely on maximizing returns for shareholders. Emma sensed there was more to the story, but Jason's tight expression suggested it wasn't something he wanted to discuss further. So this is personal, she concluded. For him, Yes. Jason's eyes met hers. For me, it's about not letting his vendetta derail something important. This project matters, Emma. More than I expected it to. The sincerity in his voice caught her off guard. Over the past 2 weeks, she'd watched Jason transform from an arrogant outsider to a committed ally. Sometimes she still caught glimpses of the entitled CEO, but more often now, she saw someone who genuinely cared about making a difference. "So what's our next move?" she asked. "We need more information about exactly what Westfield is planning, and we need to secure community support before the town council votes on their proposal." Emma nodded. "The council meets next Tuesday. That gives us 5 days." Jason drained his coffee. "Then we'd better get to work." By late afternoon, they had assembled an impromptu war room at the community center. Maps of Pinewood covered one wall, with the disputed factory property highlighted in red. On another wall hung printouts of Westfield's proposal and Jason's competing plan for the tech training center. Michael had joined them, using his online research skills to dig into Westfield's business history. Sarah from the general store brought sandwiches and rallied other local business owners to attend an emergency meeting that evening. "Westfield's offering to pay 3 times market value for the property," Michael reported, looking up from his laptop. "The town council will have a hard time turning that down, especially with the budget shortfall." Emma frowned. But what they're planning would destroy the character of Pinewood. Luxury retreats don't bring stable, well-paying jobs. Just seasonal work at minimum wage. "We need to make that clear to everyone," Jason agreed. "But we also need to match their offer somehow." The door opened and Mayor Wilson entered, looking harried. "I've scheduled the public hearing for Monday night before Tuesday's vote. Both sides will present their proposals." "Both sides?" Emma asked, confused. "Has Westfield sent representatives already?" The mayor nodded grimly. "Robert Westfield himself arrived an hour ago. He's staying at the bed and breakfast. Asked for your usual room, Mr. Marks." Jason's expression darkened. "Of course he did." "He's requested a meeting with me tomorrow morning," the mayor continued. "Says he has additional incentives for the town beyond what's in the written proposal." "Meaning what?" Emma demanded. Mayor Wilson looked uncomfortable. "I don't know yet. But several council members are already expressing interest. The town needs money, Emma, you know that." After the mayor left, a heavy silence fell over the room. "We can't match his offer financially," Emma said finally. "Not if he's already paying above market value." Jason, who had been unusually quiet, looked up from the document he was studying. "Maybe we don't have to." "What do you mean?" "Robert's approach has always been transactional. Money for assets. But a town isn't just an asset. It's a community of people with needs that go beyond financial gain." Jason stood up, energy returning to his movements. "We need to show the council and residents that our proposal offers value that Westfields can't match." Emma felt a spark of hope. Like sustainable employment versus seasonal jobs. Exactly. And healthcare access, digital connectivity, education opportunities. Jason paused, thinking. But we need something more immediate too. Something that shows our commitment is real, not just plans on paper. Michael wheeled closer to the table. "What about Mrs. Winters?" Emma and Jason both turned to him. "The medical emergency," Michael explained. "Everyone in town saw how much difference a video call with a specialist made. What if we fast-track the telehealth component of your project? Get it up and running right away before the vote?" Jason's eyes widened. "That might actually work. I'd need to pull some strings, call in favors." "Can you do it in 5 days?" Emma asked, hardly daring to hope. Jason met her gaze, determination clear in his eyes. "Watch me." The next 3 days passed in a blur of activity. While Jason worked his connections to secure equipment and medical partners for the telehealth center, Emma rallied community support. They transformed a room at the community center into a temporary telehealth station, complete with high-speed internet connection, installed overnight by a team Jason flew in from Pittsburgh, and medical-grade video conferencing equipment. Meanwhile, Robert Westfield worked the other side of the street, literally. He'd set up his temporary office directly across from the community center, hosting council members and influential residents for private meetings. From her vantage point, Emma occasionally caught glimpses of him, tall and imposing in expensive suits, with a practiced smile that never quite reached his eyes. "He's offering personal incentives to key council members," Michael reported after hacking into the town's email server, something Emma pretended not to know about. Nothing illegal, just consulting opportunities with Westfield Development after the project begins. Emma's heart sank. That's how they do it. Not outright bribes, but future rewards that are hard to prove and harder to turn down. Jason nodded grimly. Robert's specialty. He finds leverage and uses it without hesitation. They were working late again, the three of them alone in the community center. Outside, rain pattered against the windows, matching Emma's darkening mood. "We're losing ground," she admitted. "People are starting to believe Westfield's promises of immediate cash flow to the town. We just need to hold on until Sunday," Jason insisted. "Once the telehealth center is functional and people can see it working, opinions will shift." Emma wanted to believe him, but doubt gnawed at her. "And if they don't?" Before Jason could answer, the community center door flew open. Sarah rushed in, soaking wet from the rain, her expression frantic. "Emma, thank goodness you're still here. It's Mrs. Winters." Emma stood up quickly. "What happened? I thought she was recovering well." "She was, but she's had some kind of setback. She's at home and refusing to go back to the hospital. Says she can't afford another ambulance ride." Sarah wrung her hands. "Her niece called me, and I thought, with all this medical equipment you've been setting up—" "It's not fully operational yet," Jason interjected. "We're still waiting for—" "We have the video equipment working," Michael interrupted. "And the connection to your doctor friend in New York, right?" Jason hesitated for just a moment before nodding. "You're right. Let's go." Within minutes, they had loaded essential equipment into Jason's SUV and were racing through the rain toward Mrs. Winters' small house on the edge of town. The scene at Mrs. Winters' home was tense. The elderly woman lay on her couch, pale and sweating, while her niece Patricia hovered nervously nearby. "Her blood pressure medication isn't working," Patricia explained as Emma and Jason set up the video equipment. "And she's having chest pains again." Jason connected the call to his cardiologist friend, Dr. Martin, explaining the situation rapidly. Soon, the doctor's face appeared on the screen, calm and professional. "Mrs. Winters, I remember you," he said warmly. "I'm going to help you through this, but first I need to ask some questions." For the next 20 minutes, Dr. Martin guided them through a remote examination. Jason handled the technical aspects while Emma comforted Mrs. Winters. Michael coordinated with Patricia to locate all the medications in the house. "Based on what you're describing, she's having a medication interaction, not another heart attack," Dr. Martin finally concluded. "The new prescription from the hospital is conflicting with her regular medication." He outlined a plan to adjust her dosage temporarily until she could see her local doctor. By the time they finished the call, Mrs. Winters was already feeling better, color returning to her cheeks. "You saved me another trip to that awful hospital," she told Emma, squeezing her hand. "And all this happened right here in my living room. It's like magic." Emma smiled. "Not magic, just technology used the right way." As they packed up the equipment, Mrs. Winters called Jason over. "Young man, is this part of what you're trying to do for our town? This television doctor business?" Jason nodded. "Yes, ma'am. It's one component of our project." The elderly woman's eyes narrowed. "Then why is that other fellow, that Mr. Westfield, telling everyone your ideas are just pie in the sky? Patricia here said he told the garden club that none of your promises would ever materialize." Jason and Emma exchanged surprised glances. "He said that?" Emma asked. Patricia nodded. "At the meeting yesterday, Said Mr. Marks was known for big talk and no follow-through. That's why I was so scared to call you tonight, but Aunt Helen insisted. I'm glad she did, Jason said, his voice tight with controlled anger. And I'm glad you could see for yourself that our plans are very real. After ensuring Mrs. Winters was stable and comfortable, they left, the rain having subsided to a gentle drizzle. As they loaded the equipment back into Jason's SUV, Emma noticed his tense expression. You okay? Jason shook his head. Robert's playing dirty, using my past against me. What past? What's he talking about? Jason leaned against the car, suddenly looking tired. Remember when I said our partnership didn't end well? There's more to it than business disagreements. Emma waited, sensing his struggle. 8 years ago, we started a project similar to this one, a technology initiative for underserved communities in Detroit. It was my passion project. Robert thought it was a waste of resources. Jason's voice grew quiet. He deliberately sabotaged it, pulled funding at a critical moment, made it look like I had mismanaged everything. That's terrible, Emma said softly. The project collapsed. People who were counting on us got nothing. My reputation took a hit. Jason's eyes met hers. That's what he's using against me now, telling people I've failed at this before, that I can't be trusted to follow through. Emma felt a surge of protective anger. That's not fair. You're not the same person you were 8 years ago. Jason's expression softened slightly. No, I'm not. Partly because of this place, because of you. The quiet admission hung in the rain-freshened air between them. Emma felt something shift in their relationship, a new understanding, a deeper trust. Before she could respond, Jason's phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, then his face broke into a relieved smile. That was the medical equipment company, he said after ending the call. The rest of what we need will be here tomorrow morning. We can have the telehealth center fully functional by Sunday afternoon. Emma's spirits lifted. Just in time for the public hearing on Monday. Exactly. And now we have a real-world example of how it works. Jason's determination had returned. Mrs. Winters and Patricia will tell others what happened tonight. Word will spread. As they drove back to the community center, Emma felt hope returning. They had a fighting chance against Westfield, if they could hold on for just a few more days. Sunday morning arrived bright and clear, as if the weather itself had decided to support their cause. Emma stood in the newly completed telehealth center, watching as Jason directed the final equipment installations. The transformation was remarkable. What had been an unused storage room was now a modern medical consultation space with 2 private exam rooms, each equipped with video conferencing technology and basic diagnostic tools. The doctors will be available on rotation, Jason explained to the small group of town council members who had accepted their invitation to the preview. Starting with general practitioners, then adding specialists in cardiology, pediatrics, and geriatric care. And the cost to residents? Asked Councilwoman Reyes, who had been skeptical from the beginning. Minimal, Jason replied. We've secured grants to cover most expenses for the first 2 years. After that, a sliding scale based on income. Emma watched the council members' reactions carefully. Most seemed impressed, though a few remained reserved. The real test would come that afternoon when they opened the center to the public. By noon, a small crowd had gathered outside the community center. News of Mrs. Winters' late-night telehealth experience had indeed spread, just as Jason predicted. The elderly woman herself sat in a place of honor near the entrance, happily telling her story to anyone who would listen. Ready for this? Jason asked Emma as they prepared to open the doors. She nodded, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and pride. It's really happening. Thanks to you, Jason said quietly. I couldn't have done this without your knowledge of the community, your trust. Emma was about to respond when she noticed a sleek black car pulling up across the street. Robert Westfield stepped out, flanked by 2 assistants. He paused, taking in the scene in front of the community center with a cold, calculating expression. Jason followed her gaze. "Looks like we have an unexpected visitor. Should we be worried?" "Always, with Robert. But right now, we have the advantage." Jason squeezed her hand briefly. "Let's use it." The telehealth center open house was a success beyond their expectations. Residents lined up to tour the facility, ask questions, and sign up for consultations. Dr. Martin and 2 other physicians participated remotely, demonstrating how the system worked by conducting sample consultations with volunteers. Mrs. Winters held court in one corner, her status as the center's first unofficial patient making her something of a celebrity. Even Mayor Wilson seemed impressed, spending over an hour asking detailed questions about the technology and its applications. Through it all, Emma noticed Robert Westfield watching from across the street, his expression growing darker as the event's success became evident. Occasionally, council members would slip away to speak with him, returning with troubled expressions that suggested the conversation had been intense. By late afternoon, Emma was exhausted but elated. As the crowd began to thin, she found a quiet moment to step outside for fresh air. "Quite the achievement," said a voice behind her. Emma turned to find Robert Westfield standing there, his smile practiced and cold. In person, he was taller than she'd expected, his presence commanding in a way that differed from Jason's more authentic charisma. "Mr. Westfield," she acknowledged cautiously. "I don't believe we've met." "A situation I've come to remedy." He offered his hand, which Emma reluctantly shook. "I've heard a great deal about you, Miss Foster, the heart and soul of Pinewood, according to many." Something in his tone made Emma uneasy. "Just someone who cares about her community." "Indeed, which is why I wanted to speak with you directly." Westfield glanced toward the community center. "Jason has always had a talent for spectacle, flashy demonstrations that capture attention." "The telehealth center is hardly a spectacle," Emma countered. "It's already helping people." Westfield smiled indulgently. "Today, yes. But what about next month? Next year? When the novelty wears off and the real costs become apparent?" Before Emma could respond, he continued, his voice lowering confidentially. "I know Jason better than anyone, Ms. Foster. His enthusiasm burns bright but fades quickly. When that happens, who will be left holding the pieces? Your community, that's who." Emma felt her temper rising. "You don't know anything about what we're building here." "I know more than you think." Westfield's smile disappeared. "Did Jason tell you about Detroit? About the people who lost their jobs when his last community project imploded?" "He told me you sabotaged that project," Emma said firmly. Westfield laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Is that what he said? Convenient." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a business card. "When you're ready for the truth, call me. My offer to Pinewood stands regardless of your personal involvement with Jason." Something in his emphasis made Emma's cheeks burn. "There is no personal involvement." "No?" Westfield raised an eyebrow. "Then you're the first woman in Jason's orbit to maintain that distinction. Another of his talents is mixing business with pleasure." He handed her the card, which Emma took reflexively, too stunned by his insinuation to refuse. "The council votes tomorrow," Westfield said, his voice returning to its smooth, professional tone. "For Pinewood's sake, I hope they make the right choice." With that, he turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing there, the business card heavy in her hand and unwelcome doubts beginning to cloud her mind. From the community center doorway, Jason watched the exchange with a troubled expression. When Westfield was gone, he approached Emma. "What did he want?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. Emma hesitated, Westfield's words echoing in her head. "To plant seeds of doubt. That's what he does, isn't it?" Jason's eyes searched hers. "Did it work?" For a moment, Emma couldn't answer. The past weeks had changed everything. Her view of Jason, her hopes for Pinewood, her own role in shaping the town's future. She had begun to trust Jason, to believe in his vision, perhaps even to feel something deeper that she wasn't ready to examine too closely. But what if Westfield was right? What if Jason's interest in Pinewood and in her was temporary? What would happen to her community when he inevitably moved on? "Emma?" Jason prompted, concern evident in his voice. She took a deep breath. "The public hearing is tomorrow. We should focus on preparing for that." Jason looked as if he wanted to say more, but simply nodded. "You're right. Let's get back inside." As they walked back to the community center, Emma felt the distance between them growing, a space filled with unspoken questions, doubts, and a looming decision that would change Pinewood forever. Emma barely slept that night. Robert Westfield's words kept replaying in her mind, planting seeds of doubt that grew in the darkness. By morning, she had convinced herself to focus solely on what mattered most: Pinewood's future. Personal feelings, whatever they might be, had to wait. The public hearing was scheduled for 7 p.m. at the town hall. All day, tension built throughout Pinewood as residents chose sides and prepared their statements. Emma spent the morning helping Michael organize their presentation, pushing aside the awkwardness that had sprung up between her and Jason. "You two need to talk," Michael said bluntly as they worked side by side at their kitchen table. Emma kept her eyes on her notes. "We need to focus on tonight. Em, I've watched you these past weeks. You've changed. You're happier, more hopeful. That's because of him." "It's because of the project," she corrected. Michael sighed. "The project is great, but there's more going on, and you know it." Before Emma could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. Sarah from the general store stood on the porch, looking troubled. "Have you seen this?" she asked, handing Emma a glossy brochure. The cover showed an artist's rendering of a sprawling resort complex where the old textile factory now stood. Pinewood Wilderness Retreat was emblazoned across the top in elegant script. "Westfield's people are distributing them all over town," Sarah explained. "They're promising 50 permanent jobs plus seasonal positions. And look at page 3. Emma flipped to the indicated page and felt her heart sink. There, in black and white, was a proposal for a state-of-the-art medical facility on the property, complete with emergency care services. "He's copying our telehealth idea," Michael said, reading over Emma's shoulder, "but making it sound bigger and better." Sarah nodded grimly. "People are talking. Many think we should take the sure thing rather than gamble on Mr. Marks's promises." After Sarah left, Emma sat heavily at the kitchen table. "He's undercutting us at every turn." "Have you told Jason?" Michael asked. "Not yet." Emma checked her watch. "He's meeting with his tech team until noon." She stood up, decision made. "I'll go find him. We need to adjust our strategy before tonight." As she grabbed her jacket, Michael caught her arm. "Em, whatever Westfield said to you yesterday, don't let him win by driving a wedge between you and Jason. That's exactly what he wants." Emma nodded, recognizing the truth in her brother's words. "I'll try to remember that." Emma found Jason at the community center, surrounded by his team of technicians who were making final adjustments to the telehealth equipment. He looked up when she entered, his expression brightening momentarily before turning cautious. "Emma, good morning." "We need to talk," she said, holding up the brochure. "Westfield's making new promises." Jason dismissed his team with a nod, and they stepped outside to the gazebo by Miller's Pond, the place where their partnership had truly begun. "He's promising a medical facility now," Emma explained, showing him the brochure. "Copying our idea but making it sound more permanent." Jason studied the glossy pages, his expression darkening. Classic Robert. Wait to see what works, then claim it as his own idea. He looked up at Emma. "But there's something he can't copy." "What's that?" "Results. Real help for real people." Jason set the brochure aside. "While he's printing pretty pictures, We've already helped Mrs. Winters twice. That counts for something." Emma nodded, but worry still gnawed at her. People are scared to take chances. His offer seems more solid. A big company with deep pockets versus... She trailed off. "Versus me," Jason finished. "The unreliable tech CEO who might lose interest and move on." His eyes met hers directly. "That's what he told you, isn't it? That I'd abandon the project eventually." Emma couldn't deny it. "Among other things." "What other things?" She hesitated, then decided honesty was necessary. "He suggested that you have a pattern of getting personally involved with your business partners. That it's part of your approach." Jason's face flushed with anger, then settled into something more like hurt. "And you believed him?" "I don't know what to believe," Emma admitted. "I've known you for less than a month, Jason. In that time, you've gone from looking down on Pinewood to fighting for it. It's a dramatic change." "Is it?" Jason moved closer. "Or was that first impression, the condescending CEO, just a defense mechanism? A way to keep people at a distance?" Emma didn't answer, unsure where this conversation was leading. "The truth is, I saw something in you that first day," Jason continued. "When you called me out on my attitude, you were right about me, about this town, about what really matters." His voice softened. "Working with you has changed me, Emma. Or maybe it just reminded me who I wanted to be before success made me forget." The sincerity in his eyes made Emma's doubts waver. "Even if that's true, Westfield seems to know you well. Your history." "Of course he does. We were partners for years." Jason ran a hand through his hair. "Yes, I've made mistakes. Detroit was a painful lesson. And yes, I've had relationships that blurred professional and personal lines. I'm not proud of that." He took a deep breath. "But nothing about my commitment to Pinewood is false, and nothing about my feelings for you is part of some strategy." Emma felt her heart quicken. Feelings? Jason looked suddenly vulnerable, so different from the confident businessman who had first arrived in Pinewood. "I wasn't planning to have this conversation today, with everything else going on. But yes, Emma, I care about you. More than I expected to. More than is probably wise, given the circumstances." Before Emma could process this admission, her phone rang. It was Michael. "Em, you need to get to Town Hall now," her brother said urgently. "Westfield's convinced Mayor Wilson to move the public hearing up to 2 p.m. It's happening in 2 hours." "What? He can't do that." "Apparently he can. Some procedural loophole. They're notifying people now, but many won't hear in time," Emma finished, understanding immediately. "We'll be there." After ending the call, she explained the situation to Jason. His expression hardened with determination. "Another dirty trick. We need to spread the word, get as many supporters there as possible." Personal feelings would have to wait. Once again, they had a fight on their hands. By 2 p.m., the town hall was filled to capacity, though Emma noticed with dismay that several key supporters were missing, likely still unaware of the schedule change. Robert Westfield sat confidently at a table at the front, flanked by attorneys and assistants, all in matching dark suits. Emma, Jason, and Michael took the table opposite them. Their side looked distinctly less polished. Emma in her simple blouse and pants, Michael in his wheelchair, and Jason, though more formally dressed, showing signs of the stress and workload of recent days. Mayor Wilson called the meeting to order. "Due to scheduling constraints, we've moved up the public hearing regarding the proposals for the old textile factory property. Each side will present their plan, followed by public comments, and then the council will vote." Emma leaned toward Jason. "Scheduling constraints? That's a lie." Jason nodded grimly. "Robert's work. He's rushing the vote before we can fully mobilize support." Westfield presented first, his delivery smooth and practiced. He outlined a vision of Pinewood as an exclusive destination for wealthy urbanites seeking authentic rural experiences. The resort would bring immediate investment to the town, property tax revenue, and employment opportunities. The proposed medical facility would serve both guests and residents, he promised. Throughout his presentation, Westfield repeatedly emphasized the certainty of his company's commitment versus the experimental nature of the competing proposal. When it was their turn, Jason started by addressing this distinction directly. "Mr. Westfield talks about certainty," he began. "But what's certain about seasonal jobs that disappear when tourism slows? What's certain about a medical facility designed primarily for resort guests, with community access as an afterthought?" He outlined their alternative vision: sustainable year-round employment through remote work and digital skills training, true healthcare access through telehealth technology that was already operational, and a future where Pinewood residents could thrive without leaving their community. "We're not asking you to take this on faith," Jason concluded. "We've already started. The telehealth center is up and running. 2 residents have already received critical care through it. This isn't a promised future, it's happening now." When Jason finished, Emma stepped up to speak. She had planned a careful, fact-based presentation about community needs, but looking out at the faces of her neighbors, she decided on a different approach. "I've lived in Pinewood my whole life," she began. "I've seen businesses come and go. I've watched friends and family move away because they had no choice. I've held fundraisers for neighbors who couldn't afford medical bills because the nearest specialist was too far away." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "What Mr. Marks is offering isn't just jobs or healthcare. It's a chance for Pinewood to be more than a dot on the map that people drive through on their way to somewhere else. It's a chance for us to matter." Emma looked directly at Westfield. "Mr. Westfield's resort would turn us into a background for other people's vacations. We'd be the friendly locals who clean rooms and serve drinks. Is that really the future we want?" The public comment period that followed was intense and divided. Several business owners spoke in favor of Westfield's immediate financial benefits. Others, including Mrs. Winters, passionately defended the telehealth center and the difference it had already made. Throughout it all, Emma noticed Robert Westfield watching her with calculating eyes. When the last resident had spoken, he requested permission to make a final statement. "I've been listening carefully," he said, his voice reasonable and measured, "and I believe there's merit in both approaches, so I'd like to offer a compromise." He turned to face the room. "Westfield Development will proceed with the resort as planned, but will incorporate elements of Mr. Marks's proposal, including expanding the telehealth services Ms. Foster has championed." Murmurs spread through the room. Westfield continued smoothly. "In fact, I'd like to offer Ms. Foster a position as community liaison for the project, with a significant salary and decision-making authority." Emma froze, stunned by the unexpected offer. Beside her, she felt Jason tense. "This way," Westfield concluded, "Pinewood gets the best of both worlds, immediate financial investment and the community services Ms. Foster has so eloquently advocated for." The room buzzed with conversation. Mayor Wilson looked impressed. "That's quite an offer, Mr. Westfield. Ms. Foster, would you like to respond?" All eyes turned to Emma. She felt the weight of the moment. Westfield was offering her personally everything she wanted for Pinewood, while simultaneously undermining Jason and taking control of the project. "May I have a moment to consider?" she asked, her mind racing. "Of course," the mayor nodded. Emma turned to Jason, whose expression was carefully neutral. "It's not a bad offer," he said quietly. "You'd have real influence." "It's a tactic," she whispered back. "He's trying to split us up." "Maybe," Jason acknowledged, "but it might be the best chance to get what Pinewood needs." Michael wheeled closer. "Em, this is your call, but remember what we talked about this morning." Emma took a deep breath and turned back to face the room. "Mr. Westfield, I appreciate your offer. It's very generous." She paused, finding his confident smile almost predatory. "But I have some questions before I can respond." Of course, Westfield said smoothly. First, why the sudden interest in telehealth? Just yesterday, your representatives were calling it an expensive experiment with limited practical value. Westfield's smile tightened slightly. New information leads to new perspectives, Ms. Foster. I see. And the textile factory. Your plans show it demolished to make way for the main resort building. Where exactly would this telehealth center be located? Details to be determined, Westfield replied, less smoothly now. The important thing is the commitment to the concept. Emma nodded thoughtfully. One last question. In your offer, you mentioned my role specifically. What about the rest of the team? What about Mr. Marks's continued involvement? Westfield's expression hardened. This would be a Westfield development project. Mr. Marks's consultation would no longer be required. As I suspected. Emma straightened, suddenly clear on her decision. Mr. Westfield, while I appreciate the offer, I must decline. Surprise rippled through the room. Westfield's confident expression faltered. Ms. Foster, perhaps you don't understand the opportunity. I understand perfectly, Emma interrupted. You're not interested in helping Pinewood. You're interested in beating Jason Marks. Our community is just collateral damage in your personal vendetta. She turned to address the council and residents directly. What we've started here is real. The telehealth center exists. It's already helping people. Mr. Marks has committed not just money, but his personal time and expertise to make it happen. Emma's voice grew stronger. I've worked alongside him these past weeks. I've seen his commitment firsthand. Has he made mistakes in the past? Yes, haven't we all? But he's here now, working harder than anyone to make a real difference. She glanced at Jason, who was watching her with quiet amazement. Pinewood deserves partners who believe in us for who we are, not what we can do for someone else's bottom line or ego. I believe Jason Marks is that partner, and I believe in the future we're building together. The room fell silent. Emma returned to her seat, her heart pounding. Jason reached under the table and squeezed her hand briefly, his eyes saying more than words could. Mayor Wilson cleared his throat. Well, I think we've heard all perspectives. The council will now vote on the proposals. The next few minutes were tense as each council member cast their vote. When the final tally was announced, 4 votes for the Marks project, 3 for Westfield, Emma felt a wave of relief so powerful she nearly collapsed in her chair. Across the room, Robert Westfield's face darkened with anger. He gathered his documents without a word and strode out, his team scrambling to follow. The room erupted in conversation. People approached their table, some offering congratulations, others asking questions about next steps. Through it all, Emma felt anchored by Jason's presence beside her, steady and real. Hours later, after the crowds had dispersed and the immediate celebrations had ended, Emma and Jason walked slowly back toward her house. The setting sun cast long shadows across Pinewood's quiet streets. For the first time in weeks, there was no crisis to manage, no deadline looming. So, Jason said, breaking the comfortable silence, we won. Emma smiled. We did, though I suspect Robert Westfield isn't done trying to cause trouble. Probably not, Jason agreed, but we'll handle that when it comes. He paused. You were amazing today, Emma. What you said, it meant everything. Emma felt her cheeks warm. I just told the truth as I see it. They reached the gazebo by Miller's Pond and stopped, both seeming to recognize it as the right place for this conversation. Before all the chaos this morning, Jason said carefully, we were discussing something important. Emma nodded, suddenly nervous. Your feelings? And yours? Jason asked, a question in his voice. Emma looked out over the water, gathering her thoughts. When you first came to Pinewood, I thought I had you figured out. The arrogant city executive slumming it in the countryside. Jason winced. Not my finest moment. But then I got to know you, Emma continued. The real you. The the person who stays up all night researching rural healthcare options, who sits in story time with first graders, who calls in every favor he has to help people he barely knows. She turned to face him. That person I could fall for. Maybe already have. The vulnerability in Jason's eyes matched her own. Even though I'm not from here, even though part of my life will always be elsewhere? I'm not asking for promises you can't keep, Emma said softly. I just want honesty, real partnership. The rest we can figure out. Jason stepped closer, taking her hands in his. I can promise that, and I can promise that whatever happens between us, my commitment to this project, to Pinewood, remains. It's separate from my feelings for you, though those feelings are very real. Emma smiled. Good enough for me. As the last light of day faded, Jason leaned down and kissed her gently. Emma felt the rightness of it. Not a fairy tale ending, but a beginning. A partnership formed through challenge and mutual respect, with all the complexity that entailed. 6 months later, the old textile factory hummed with new life. Where outdated machinery once stood, rows of computers now filled the main floor. Local residents of all ages learned coding, digital marketing, customer service skills, and more. The telehealth center had expanded to 3 locations throughout the county, with plans for more. The emergency drone program had launched successfully, already saving 2 lives in remote areas. Emma walked through the training center, checking in with instructors and students. Her role as community director had evolved into a full-time position, one she approached with the same dedication she'd always given to Pinewood. In the back office, she found Jason on a video call with his New York team. He split his time now, 2 weeks in Pinewood, 1 week in the city, a balance that allowed him to maintain his company while building something new here. He smiled when he saw her, quickly wrapping up his call. How's registration for the new classes? Full, with a waiting list, Emma reported happily. The word is spreading to neighboring towns. Jason stood and stretched. Good thing we're planning the expansion then. They walked together to the large windows overlooking Main Street. Pinewood looked different now. Storefronts that had been empty were opening with new businesses. The general store had expanded. Even the gazebo by Miller's Pond had been restored, now a popular spot for the growing community to gather. When you first came here, did you ever imagine this? Emma asked, gesturing to the activity around them. Jason shook his head. Not even close. I thought I was just scouting a potential investment opportunity. And instead? He smiled, taking her hand. Instead, I found a purpose. A community. He looked at her with warmth that still made her heart skip. A partner. Emma leaned her head against his shoulder, content in the knowledge that their journey together, with all its challenges and unexpected turns, was just beginning. Pinewood was transforming, and so were they, growing together in ways neither could have predicted. As they stood watching their shared vision come to life, Emma thought about the day Jason Marks had first arrived in his expensive suit and polished shoes, looking at Pinewood as if it were beneath him. How far they had both come since then, learning to see beyond first impressions, to recognize value in unexpected places, and to build something meaningful together. Outside, the first snow of winter began to fall gently over Pinewood. A new season, full of promise,